I can hear you very well.
Hello,
Good evening.
good evening, everyone. Okay, so we'll start just in 1 or 2 minutes. I'm waiting for others also to join. Okay, we'll start in 2 minutes. Okay, guys. Good evening, everyone. Let's begin with the today's session. Okay, today we are going to speak about wireless, or I'm going to speak about wireless and concept of virtualization. Okay, wireless is a very important part. These days, we all have devices which we use, which supports wireless principles. Okay, or which basically runs on wireless principles. Okay, so how does what kind of things which are of concern when we are on wireless, and what is the technology what we are using, which standard we are using, all these things we are going to discuss on related to wireless. Now, starting with the basic, very basic thing, okay, about wireless thing, what we have to start is when we are on a wired medium, we say that we basically use cables as a physical layer. On at physical layer, we make use of cables, okay, which can be a twisted pair cable or a coaxial cable or an optical fiber cable, likewise. So when we are on wireless, we basically deal with one of the very important thing, that is your radio waves. Okay, so as soon as you think about wireless, you need to just think about what are the basic things which we can correlate with the wired mechanism. Okay, so that becomes easier for you to connect that what kind of principles we are based, or on what principles the wireless things work, because it has become the integral part of life. These days we use our mobiles, our tablets, our laptops. Initially people used to have desktops, and to get a wired connection or a wireless connection, there used to be a lot of, kind of struggle which people used to have it. But these days, since we all are so used to the wireless things, even if we go on public places or anywhere else, we see that we are easy to connect with the internet with the help of the wireless devices. So on what principle these devices work and what kind of issues we are concerned with the wireless, that we are going to discuss in this class. So first and foremost, talking about radio waves, that as I mentioned, that we are going to talk about, we are talking in the air medium, and specifically we are focusing on radio waves. And when we are talking on a wireless medium, obviously we are talking on radio waves, means there is a certain frequency in which we are communicating. And for a wireless mechanism, you will see that you are going to send and receive in the same frequency. And when we say that we are going to take or talk in the same frequency, we are using the same channel, because frequency can also be referred as channel. So if we are going to talk on the same channel, then we cannot have a full duplex communication. So we have to have a half duplex communication. That means one at a time. And this was something which I had also discussed when we had discussed one of the network device. Can anybody recall which devices functions in half duplex? Which network device which functions in half duplex?
Hub.
Hub. And we said that though we don't use hub in an actual networking setup, and though we say we blame hub that it is not good, it is not making use of anything, but in actual wireless scenario, the kind of access points, the routers, what you have at home, they behave like a hub only. Okay, so the principle of working is more or less taken from the hub. So you will
Ma'am, you
find
are
that
not audible.
I'm not audible. Hello, am I audible
Yes,
now?
yes, yeah, audible.
Okay, okay, fine. So I was talking that though we have derived the principle of the wireless devices or the wireless access point with the help of hub. Okay, so we know that hub is making use of half duplex communication, and also we understood that there is a lot of problems related to collision when we are working with the hub. Okay, since it repeats the signal in every port from except from where it has the frame has arrived. So in order to avoid collision on a wired medium, we had talked about the procedure CSMA CD, which means that whoever is participating in the communication needs to sense the carrier first. The medium is a shared medium. Okay, since it is a shared medium, we are talking about that every participant or every host needs to first sense the carrier. If it is free, then you put down your frame there, and in between, if you find, so this is a carrier sense multi-axis. Okay, and once the two hosts who are communicating, they understand that some collision has happened, then they are going to put up a jamming signal, and this signal will be received by all other hosts, and they will need to keep their self mum till the time the two people complete their communication. So CSMA CD is detecting the collision and putting a jamming signal, then selecting a random clock, and then trying to initiate the communication again. In radio waves, when we are talking on air, we are not, it is not possible for us to detect the collision in air. Okay, it is not possible to detect collision in air. So we basically make use of the procedure collision avoidance. Okay, so we are using the procedure CSMACA. We cannot detect the collision, but we have to avoid it. Okay, now just now when I mentioned about the frequency, okay, the frequency is nothing but, in this case we make use of the ISM band. This is nothing but industry, scientific, and medical. When you are basically wanting to do in any of these industry, scientific, or medical kind of band, I can say, which basically falls in 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz. These are the two frequencies which we have, for which you don't need to go and buy the license, right? For other all frequencies where we communicate with our mobile or any other communication satellite, we basically have a certain frequencies kept reserved, and which has to be licensed. The spectrum needs to be purchased from the government, and accordingly you can utilize for your application or for your communication. But for this band, we basically don't need to have a license. So we say 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz are the frequencies where your wireless devices generally work. Okay, so this is very important, guys. 2.4 and 5 gigahertz, this is a band which is basically doesn't require any kind of licensing, and hence you will find a lot of applications are running, means for experimentation purpose we use this thing. Okay, all your wireless principals are also using this frequency. So there is a lot of we can say that there are not many channels or many frequencies out of these which are available. Okay, so you will find a lot of kind of congestion in this particular band. Also, when we are deploying the wireless devices, very important concept or important issue I can say is related to coverage. Because you generally make use of access points, okay, these access points, they need to be placed properly so that you get a good coverage. Okay, when we are working with 2.4 gigahertz, the coverage is quite good enough. Then 5 gigahertz I can say, And depending upon the number of users you have in your networking scenario, you need to decide the number of access points. Okay, so whether you are at home or you're at enterprise, accordingly you need to check the coverage by placing the access points so that your users are able to connect to these points and access their network. Okay, so it's a very important parameter. Second is the interference. It's very obvious that you are going to have a lot of objects around which are going to be basically wireless signals. When they travel, they will face a lot of issues related to reflections, scattering, and absorption. Reflections means the signals are going to get bounced from different materials, especially when they are metals, they are good reflectors. So if you have metals around your environment, then scattering is also possible, because scattering will help, it is not going to, these are the phenomenon, or I can say, which basically degrades your wireless signal strength. Okay, because when we are talking through the wireless medium, we need to ensure that the strength is enough, that the information is gone without error. So reflections, scattering, where you will see that the signals value, or the signal may degrade it. Also we have absorption due to the different material like water and any other medium, I can say, where your signals are traveling. So the strength of the signal, or I can say, is more or less dependent upon all these issues, and interference which is caused by due to other application which is working in the same frequency. Okay, so there may be a crosstalk which may happen. So there needs to be a good separation, so that we can have a good communication. Okay, so because of other applications working within the same frequency band, since I said it is used by industries for scientific purposes and for medical, also for medical purposes, so you may find that there can be a kind of interference which may happen. Apart from the interferences I talked about, this can be the related issues for the wireless signals to travel, because to maintain a shape of the signal and the strength of the signal, you should see that the wireless signals are going through this kind of uh, phenomenon. Okay, there will be reflections, scattering, and absorption. Another very important concern for all of us is that how can we ensure security? Can we ensure the same level of security which we consider for a wired medium? When we say the basic difference between wireless and wired, and the point of difference, when people feel that what should be what is a major concern is nothing but the privacy and the security. Okay, security is a very important concern, because your traffic is on air and it can be easily captured through different packet capture tools. Okay, and it is possible that you can that is a major issue, which is not that in case of a cable or a wired medium. So in order to ensure privacy, we need a good encryption and mechanism, a good authentication mechanism. So with the help of these two mechanisms, we can basically solve this bottleneck. We can solve this problem. Okay. So authentication, encryption. We also need a good integrity check, so that our data is not being modified. Okay, so these are the primary concerns when you are dealing with the wireless devices or wireless connection. Then comes the regulation. Now, this needs to be taken care by the several bodies which we have. We have the International Telecommunication Union regulatory, which will basically monitor all kind of, whether you're adhering to all kind of standards or no. We have IEEE standards, which basically gives the standard for different supporting different data rates, different number of channels, different types of security. So generally we use 802.11 IEEE standards for wireless communication. Okay, so there are different versions. Again, you have 11A, B, G, N, I, many more. So ITUR, IEEE, also we have Wi-Fi Alliance. This is basically a non-profit organization, and these are the regulatory bodies, I can say, which basically helps your device to be like wireless enabled. So when you want the device to your device has to be wireless enabled, it should go through the specific standards. It should meet the requirements, the criterias which is set up by these bodies, okay, or these organizations. And it's wireless standards, as I just talked about, IEEE, we have different standards depending on the data rate you want and the kind of mechanism involved for communication. So this is in short talking about the different points when we are talking or when we think about wireless communication. Okay, now we will discuss something more related to wireless standards, like what kind of bandwidth is supported, how many channels are available for communication, etc. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So these are the different standards, and you see the frequency. 802.11a is working on 5 gigahertz frequency. There are 23 channels, and it supports data rate up to 54 megabits. Remember, this data rate we are talking is only related to the physical layer. Okay, just like we had the fast Ethernet, the gigabit Ethernet, there we were talking in terms of 100 Mbps, 1 Gbps. Likewise, here we are talking data rate. The data rate is for the physical layer and should not be considered otherwise. Okay, so A is using 5 gigahertz, B is using 2.5, but it supports 3 channels and the data rate is also low. And 11G is also using 2.4 gigahertz, but it is supporting a maximum of 54 megabits data rate. And N is using both 2.4 and 5 gigahertz, and it depends on which frequency you are working with. And you have 300 to 600 megabits per second. Okay, so what you can see is widely used is B and G, I can say, because they work with the same 2.4 gigahertz frequency. And just now I mentioned that in terms of coverage perspective, the frequency 2.4 gigahertz is widely used, okay, because it gives you good coverage. So these two bands, or these two standard, I can say, this is an IEEE standard, guys. So based on that, you have A, B, G, N, 11A, 11B, 11G, 11N. So these are the channels. Basically, we are saying that how many channels are available. You only see here 3, which is nothing but they are non-overlapping channels. That means if you have, let's say, I can say that if this 802.11b, if there are 14 or 15 channels in actual, okay, if there are 14 or 15 channels starting from 1 2 3 4 5 6, okay, so if one of your frequency, let's say 2.401 or 402, likewise gigahertz, if one of your channel is at this part, then the other channel, maybe you have to take a separation of 4 or 5 channels, and then you can think of that this can be, if I separate 4 channels, I keep a separation of 4 channel, then I can use the 6th channel. Again, if I can keep a separation of 4 channels, 7, 8, 9, 10, I can use 11th one. So these are the non-overlapping channels, so that you don't have any kind of interference. So there is a separation, and this leads to a less of, less of data rate. And here when you see that the data rate is high, that means if you are trying to bond them, if you are trying to use 1 as well as 11, okay, you want to bond it and then use it, that is known as channel bonding. So when you do the channel bonding, in that manner, you can increase your data rate, which is done by 802.11g. So you can take 2 or 3 multiple channels, bond them together to get this kind of data rate. Okay, so when I'm talking about channel, guys, remember these are frequencies we are talking about. So that's what I said, 2.401 gigahertz. So this can be 2.406 or 7 now when we create a separation, generally we keep a separation of 20 to 25 megahertz, okay, so that there is less of interference. So this is all about the wireless standards which we basically use for communicating. Okay, now let's talk a little more about security, because as I mentioned that this is a primary concern. Security or privacy is a primary concern. So which kind of protocols and algorithms are working with the wireless devices? Okay, so these are the three basic thing you may come across related to wireless security. WEP stands for Wired Equivalent Policy. That means it says that it may give you a wired equivalent protection, but this is not being widely used because the algorithm it is using is a very weak algorithm, as well as the key. Now we need to understand that in an encryption or a decryption, because we said that we have to have authentication, encryption as a very important thing to achieve security. When we talk about encryption, guys, we are generally dealing encryption and decryption. They are inverse of each other. So we are dealing with few components in security. We say it as we have a plain text. We need a key. We need a ciphertext. And we need a encryption and a decryption algorithm. So basically, your ciphertext is being generated. Now the ciphertext is nothing but it is your encrypted text which is going through the network and which is basically keeping your information hidden. So you need to apply the algorithm along with the key to the plain text to get your ciphertext. So these are the 3-4 components which I say a very important part when you are learning security or you're learning cryptography, okay, which is the art of securing your message. So you need an algorithm, and the algorithm is generally kept open for everyone. Everyone knows, even your attacker, anyone who is there in the network will know about the algorithm. What remains as a secret or as a privacy is your key. And WEP is making use of static keys, which means that for every communication happening in the network, the key remains the same. So there is a possible that your attacker can, make a database of a corresponding ciphertext and a plain text pair, and may try to, do brute force and get the key. So if in when we talk about the security, guys, the key is the very, very, very important parameter, because if the key gets compromised, your entire security is at risk. Okay, so we say that this key has to be kept very properly so that you take care of your security. Algorithm is, again, we see that WEP, it makes use of RC for algorithm, but since it uses static keys, this is subjected to a lot of they are subjected to brute force attacks, and hence they are not widely used. Okay, this is basically not used currently. Okay, WPA, which came later, okay, that stands for your Wi-Fi protected access. Okay, now these security protocols, what we are talking, okay, this was basically given by Wi-Fi Alliance. Just now when I mentioned about the regulatory bodies, okay, these are given by Wi-Fi Alliance, and IEEE tells about all these kind of security by using the standard 802.11i. This is what 802.11i defines all this thing, but we generally don't say it as 802.11i. We better use these terms which is defined by Wi-Fi Alliance, and that is why we use WEP, WPA, WPA2. These are the these are the protocols, I can say, or these are the mechanisms which are there for wireless. Now WPA is making use of the same algorithm what WEP was using, but with the slight change, keeping the keys to be dynamic. Okay, so we can say that there is a protocol which is running, which is temporary key integrity protocol. Okay, so these protocol is basically generating the dynamic keys for every communication between the when you are whenever you want to communicate, you can make use of different keys which is basically creating a good domain for anyone to go with the brute force attack. Okay, but still we see that there are a lot of issues with these dynamic keys and WPA. So the most secured thing which we currently use in our own systems is WPA2, the version second, which makes use of AES algorithm, which is a very popular symmetric key algorithm, and so far no one has compromised it because it has good, like I can say, strength. There are no weakness so far which found for the AES algorithm, and definitely the keys which you create can be pre-shared key or it can be created using 802.1x and EAP. Okay, so keys are basically, because AES has different versions. You have 128 bit, you have 192 bit. Now what I'm talking about, these all are is the algorithm which takes how many number of bits and it can encrypt how many bits of ciphertext. So these are the numbers like 128 bit, 192 bit and 256 bit. These are the numbers of the key, cipher key. We say that these are the numbers of the cipher key, because the higher the length of the key, the better it is, because it gives you a good key domain. Key domain is basically the size or the list of all possible keys. So when I talk about 128, it means we are talking about that the key domain size is 2 raised to 128 keys. When we talk about 192, it means we have the key domain of 2 raised to 192. When anybody has to do a brute force attack, guys, it means that it has a knowledge, it has to create a file with all possible combination, okay, of making a list such that it can then try one after one and see whether it is possible for you to get into the system. So nearly impossible. 2 raised to 128, 2 raised to 192, 2 raised to 256. So far to AES is outstanding. It is going good. As of now, no one is able to, go and attack or, compromise this algorithm. This is a symmetric key algorithm, guys. Symmetric key algorithm, we do have a symmetric key. I'm not getting into more of security because it will be a little more mathematical and technical in nature. So for now, you just need to understand that AES is an algorithm, a symmetric key block cipher, I can say. And we do need keys over here. So pre-shared keys are what basically? Pre-shared keys are those keys which you basically, when you set up a Wi-Fi at your home. Okay, so in order to access your router, you are asked a key. If you remember, we are asked a key. We are shown the SSID. When you keep your Wi-Fi enabled, you see the SSID. That means the names of the network available around you. And after you see that, you basically are prompted for a key. Now at home, we know that we have users, so we know the key, but the problem with the pre-shared key is that if any unknown person gets an idea about this key, he can eventually get into your network and would try to do some kind of malicious activity. Hence, a pre-shared key is a good when you are trying to create it complex. That's why people recommend to set a strong password. Strong password means making use of all kind of letters, alphabets, words, or sorry, numbers, special characters, such that it is difficult to do a brute force attack. But still, people have seen that they develop a dictionary, they develop all possible list combination of all kind of things to basically hack your system. Okay, so pre-shared key is the one, and in enterprises we don't take the risk of having a pre-shared key, so we basically go with this 802.1x and EAP scenario. So what does this do then? What is different than the pre-shared key with this? In simple terms, I can say that there is a sort of authentication mechanism which is there in this, which is missing in your pre-shared. Okay, we don't authenticate in a pre-shared mechanism. Whoever has a key, enter it, and then you get the access to the network, which we do it in our home basically. In this particular approach where we basically use for our enterprise LAN, wireless LAN, we see that there is an authentication mechanism. So your router will first act like an authenticator, where you will give, where you will put up your username, and then there will be an authentication server. So I can just draw a scenario such that we have a computer. Okay, let me just clean this, and we can then understand. Mm, let's say we have a computer or a laptop connected over a access point, and this access point will act like an authenticator. Okay, and behind that you may have a router in place, or you may have anything, and there is a server which we say as an authentication server, which has a database of username and the kind of password what is given to that particular user. Okay, so that mechanism is more secure when you are going for a bigger network, bigger wireless network, or a very scalable wireless network. For a very small network, it is okay to go with this by considering that you set up a strong password. Okay, so this was all about the kind of algorithms involved and the kind of mechanisms we use. So we basically use WPA2 in our devices. Okay, now let's go to the next part, which is the wireless LAN. Just now, and I mentioned about wireless LAN, I talked about a scenario where we are at home and when we are at enterprise. So how do we basically take care about all these things? When we are at home or a small office, home office, the meaning of SOHO is small office, home office. For such a scenario where you have very limited number of users, okay, where you have a wired device or a wireless devices, okay, you have a wireless devices which are connected over access point, and these access point is basically acting like what it is acting like many other things, like it is acting like your ethernet switch also. It is acting like your access point. It is also acting like a router, and in some cases it may also act like a modem. So you see that multiple capabilities are being combined together, and the features of authentication. Apart from this, we see that the wireless standards which we see, authentication and then forwarding the traffic, these two mechanism, authentication and forwarding the traffic, everything is being done by your home access point, which is also known as your autonomous point, because everything is being done by the same device. In actual scenario, this access point could have been splitted into like an access point which is just like connecting via a switch, then over that you're connected to a router, and then you are connected via cable or a DSL to your internet service provider. Okay, so I can say that all these functionalities are being clubbed into one access point when you are into a small office or home office, small office, home office scenario. However, when you are on an enterprise WLAN, you will need that one single access point is not going to do your work. Okay, you may have, let's say, thousands, you have thousands of users at your campus, and you will need different, you will need several access points, because if one access point is shared by 100 users, the bandwidth gets shared. So your capability is, or the performance is getting affected. When you are on wireless LAN or wired LAN, we know that we are actually targeting for a high performance in terms of data rate. So high performance means you need a lot of access points to be placed in your networking scenario. And in that case, if these access point is basically involved in doing all this job, okay, then it is going to increase a lot of overhead. Apart from that, your users in your scenario are not static. They are moving around the campus. So as they move, you want the specific switching of access points to happen from one access point to other access point, like the way we use our mobiles, we roam from one place to other place, so we are able to connect to the mobile towers and we are able to set up a communication smoothly or in a smooth manner, which we say it as a mobile roaming. In terms of mobile communication, you must have heard about the term roaming. So roaming means when you are basically switching from one access point to other access point, the communication should be, or there should be, it should happen that the handover should happen very smoothly. Okay, the handover mechanism. Now you have authenticated to these access point, your communication is already going on, then you have moving, and when you are moving, if you have to have connecting to these access point, then again you need to do authentication for the same. And meanwhile you again start the authentication process, your communication will get dropped. Okay, and you would not want so. So in for such a scenario where you are having so many access points and you need the authentication mechanism to be taken care by some other device, okay, or it can be taken up by one common device, and these access points are only used for forwarding your traffic, that will help you in a very good manner. So in an enterprise, we have a wireless LAN controller and a lightweight access point. A lightweight access point, I can say that, is used only for forwarding your traffic, and all kind of authentication mechanism, roaming mechanism, creating new wireless network, etc. Okay, this all is being taken care by your, managed by your controller, wireless LAN controller. So all your traffic is going to be, so whatever communication related to authentication and roaming etc will be passed to the controller, and the controller is going to take that particular task of allowing the access point only to do the forwarding of traffic job. Okay, so in an enterprise wireless LAN we make use of controllers and access point, which is lightweight access points for communication. Okay, so this was all about the wireless LAN, guys. Now coming to the next topic, if you have any doubts, guys, here till here so far, anything you want to ask, please let me know. Anything which you feel that you have any questions, because here we wind up with the wireless principles.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay. Okay. So for as I mentioned, we are not, we didn't go much with the security concepts, because when we are talking about these authentication, encryption and integrity, guys, for authentication, it's like you may have to go with the one-time password, or you may go with the username password, and there are other mechanisms also involved. If anybody has an idea about, you know, authentication using digital signatures, if you have heard about digital signatures, that can be used for authentication. By using digital signatures, we are basically making use of certificates to authenticate. Okay, so you can make use of digital signatures for authentication purposes, or certificates in short, I can say. So everything can be authenticated using this. Encryption can be done using AES algorithms, as I mentioned. And integrity check is very important, guys. So integrity check, as I mentioned, there is a message integrity check, MIC what we say, okay, which is there. And for that we make use of timestamp. So timestamp is used as a message integrity check. So you calculate your message integrity check, you send it over the network, the receiver is going to again calculate it and going to verify whether it matches with your calculation or no. Okay, so that is what is how the message integrity is being done. And these three are very important: encryption, authentication and integrity over a wireless network. Now moving on to the next topic of the day, which is related to virtualization. Now, why did virtualization came into picture, or how did it has taken over everywhere? When we see cloud today, we are actually talking about virtualization. So back in those days where we had physical servers, we were not utilizing it up to the mark. That means what? What do you mind? What do I mean by up to the mark? The hardware, what we used to got it, and then we used to have only one operating system installed over it, and maybe some few applications we were trying to run on those servers. So the birth of virtualization is basically because of underutilization of your physical servers. Okay, so when we talk about virtualization, that means what? We have this scenario in our mind that now we have multiple operating systems, we can run multiple applications, and you can set up your network in this manner. So for that you need, when you go for virtualization, you will need hypervisors. And hypervisors are nothing but they are virtualization softwares, I can say. Okay, so those virtualization softwares, you need to install it, and over that you basically install your virtual machines. Your virtual machines are like your physical servers, only that you set up all your resources. Okay, what are the resources when you are talking about servers? The resources is such that we want to have uh, storage, networking, database, and I can also say about computational, all these kind of resources. So whatever physical resources which you used to see on physical servers, now these resources will be virtually available. So that is what you see virtual machines. So this is very much similar to your physical services, because all these concepts which we say for a physical server, it remains the same. So understanding virtual machines is very much easier, because it is the terms and the terms which we use for describing our physical servers in terms of RAM, memory, CPUs, what kind of CPUs you want, single core, dual core, multi-thread, hyper-threading, all those kind of things which we say is similarly applicable for your virtual machines. Okay, so we have two types of hypervisors, guys. Type 1 is where you see that you directly get your hardware, install the hypervisor. Now type 1 hypervisors, we can say that we have KVM, we have Citrix, Zen, we have Microsoft Hyper-V. Okay, so there are different hypervisors available. Okay, so you got to have a hardware which you install any of these hypervisors. They are nothing but your virtualized, okay, they're virtual softwares, I can say. On top of that, you have different virtual machines. You can run different, you can install, now there are 3 virtual machines you can see. You can set up as many you want as based on the hardware you have. On top of it, you can have an operating system and then your application running over it. In a physical server environment, I can simply say that you had a hardware, you had an operating system, and you had an application. This was very simple to describe. Okay, so now you can see that you have multiple operating system features, multiple applications running. So this is the type 1 hypervisor which we can use. Now on the type 2 hypervisor, what we do is we already have a host operating system. Let's say now I am having a Windows operating system. What I got to do is I got to download this hypervisor. Now in this case, the hypervisor can be your simple VM virtual box, a very, very simple one, or you can have your VM workstation. Okay, so either of this you can go and download, okay, and you will install it in your system. After that, you just need to spin up a virtual machine by setting up the amount of RAM you want, the kind of storage you want, similar to the way we give it for a normal hardware, the way we set up the operating system. On that, before you set up or browse your operating system's image, let's say Linux, Mac, anything, you just need to spin up a virtual machine, and on that you are going to install the kind of operating system. So now I am using, my host can be anything. My host is Windows. I can go and install Linux, Ubuntu, or any other distros, and accordingly then I can run several applications like this. Okay, though we say that here we are basically utilizing more or less type 1 or type 2, like they are almost similar. Okay, not much of a difference I can say. There is still a kind of a kernel required for you to support this hypervisor. Okay, just like we have a kernel installed in our means when we are using an operating system, that talking about operating systems we say it in terms of kernel. So those things are there to support your hypervisors. So here also in background we do have a VMware xSky kernels which are there to support these hypervisors. Okay, now what is the drawback which I can see from this thing is that if any of your hypervisors crash, okay, if any of your hypervisor crash, then your entire virtual machines will basically collapse. Okay, so that is one of the drawback I can say. Second drawback what I can say is that in order to run any application in your given scenario, the kind of overhead which it is taking, okay, because in order to, let's say I am using this type 2 setup, so I need to start up the VM, and which will take some time, and then you need to load the operating system, and the file size is also very large because you are trying to browse the iOS image and install it. So simply installing Ubuntu may take up a file size of 3.4 GB. Okay, so I can simply say that the kind of lag which you will face when you are installing virtual machines is that you first need to set up that particular operating system, it will then load it, and then you got to install the application, which will be again of a different length as per what you are trying to run. Okay, so the overhead involved in virtualization using this virtual machines are little more complex. For this, we have a better option and we go with the containerization. Okay, so how is containerization different from your this kind of virtual machines? Okay, we'll see this in the last slide, which we have here. Let me just clear this. So the last thing which we are going to discuss is about the containerization. So what you see is now is there is a single operating system, any host operating system. You got to install the container engine to separate the different containers. So these containers are nothing but they are the images which basically contains your application and the related dependencies. You know that to run an application you need different packages, dependencies. So these containers are basically nothing but they are the package. In short, I can say they are the package which has the application and the related dependencies. So you can install, and they're all isolated, so you can have different containers, different applications and their dependencies, so they're all isolated. And even if anything happens or any security issue happens in this, will not trouble other containers. So to tell you in terms of a kind of difference, what we see is that they are going to be very small in size as compared to your VM, where you got to install your VM and the iOS, the operating system, and then the application. So these are going to be very small in size because it will not take much of a memory. Maybe depending on applications, I can simply say that much amount of only memory is required. You don't need any other memory. Apart from small in size, they are quite portable. Okay, they can be scaled up, they're highly scalable because you don't need to install different virtual machines. Here I can say that you as many you want, you can create the container images. Okay, so they are small in size, they are portable, they are scalable, and they are fast because you don't need to wait for another operating system to boot, to load, and then your application will run. So they are fast, and as well as they're isolated because none of them are going to impact each other. Okay, they're all isolated. And the one more feature what we have is the immutability. Immutability means what? That these container images are created using a container file. Now generally an example of container is, we say, is a Docker. Okay, the Docker containers. So when you modify when you modify any of these Docker file or the container file, or basically I say that when you modify any code in the container file, you got to change the image is going to change then. Okay, because they are being like, these images are developed using a blueprint. Okay, something which is, I can say that it's similar to like a snapshot. Okay, so there is already a blueprint through which you are creating these images. So if you change anything inside the Docker file or inside the code, okay, then the images needs to be changed. Okay, and these are also subjected to vulnerabilities. When we talk about the disadvantages, there are a lot of advantages, but the disadvantages is that if you try to, you know, don't change your images on, or don't keep an update about the images, then there are possibilities to have a, you know, attack on those things, or there is a threat, I can say. Okay, because when you are changing anything, any update, any version, when you are changing new you know, your code, then the specific images needs to be applied, and it should be, because it is immutable. That means if you have done it, if you have installed it, if you have done it, then this cannot be changed until and unless, okay, now you change the code, then you will get an image out of it, and then again you need to install it. Okay, so you need to see that you keep an updated one and not the older ones, because if you have an older one, then that can lead to an issue with the security. Okay, so when we talk in terms of comparison, the comparison is very simple. In terms of, you can talk in terms of size of the file required for installing, the kind of portability, scalability, fast, and security, how it is. Okay, so this is all about containerization, and your cloud computing basically is based on this concept of virtualization and containerization, where you basically rent somebody's else devices and use as per your requirement, as per your application, according to the time, amount of time you want to utilize, without investing a lot. Okay, that is what we say for cloud computing, that as a new startup, when you start, okay, when you have to create a new business which is on a small scale basis or on a large scale basis, and you don't have to basically go right from the scratch, how traditionally where people used to go and get all the devices, make an infrastructure, set up a networking team, and do all the maintenance, operations, everything. So with the cloud computing, things have evolved in a very good manner. So we have the AWS, Amazon Web Services, we have Microsoft Azure, we have Google. Okay, so these are the these are the cloud platforms, I can say, which basically makes use of this virtualization and containerization approach to give your business good solutions in terms of computation, storage, networking, everything. So that is a different story in cloud computing, where we have different services as per your services, whether you want to use infrastructure as a service, or a platform as a service, or a software as a service. Accordingly, you can create your servers within few seconds. It is not required that you need to go and purchase it. You just sit, open your AWS account, create an account, set up what kind of requirement you want in terms of CPU, in terms of memory, in terms of security. You just define it and your server will be ready to use. It is just pay as you go model. How much ever time you use, that amount of time, whatever is the amount, you got to pay it. So if you're not using for a specific period, you don't need to pay it. So it's a very good model to work with cloud computing. For that, you should know a basic knowledge about networking. Okay, so here we stop with the theoretical concepts. Now the last lecture will happen on Thursday, which will be based on IPsec tunneling, and I will also show you a short preview related to Ansible, how to basically automate, how do we basically automate things, or how we write the script. Okay, if possible, I will show you that, and I'll complete the tunneling part. If anyone has any doubts, so Thursday is going to be our last lecture, guys. So if you have any queries, any doubts, let me know. We are also starting with the full-fledged advanced CCNA, or I can say that I could not get into very deep level in all of the topics what we have gone through, though we have got it in a superficial manner, but I have tried touching up all the topics. So if you're interested in joining those lectures, please contact Sagar. He will tell you the timings and everything. We are starting from today. So it's a online paid class. Okay. So let me know if you're interested. If you have any queries, let me know, guys.
What's the most common scenario we found in a data center about the virtualization?
See, advanced is going to be there and going to take it right there. There I have students who are also not from the technical background. And we are going to take, since I talked about wireless principles, I talked about virtualization, but that was just in brief. Maybe I got to show you through the help of some, let's say when I talked about cloud computing, I will show you some examples on AWS web services, where I will show you that this is how we basically do the cloud computing stuff, and this is how we do the more of programming in automation. How do we actually do it? Okay, there will be some lab sessions which I will take it for those topics which I couldn't take it for these sessions. Okay, so there will be a lot of depth which will be involved, because 21 days is actually not what we say is enough. I have actually stretched more than 21 days, I know, but in the advanced class we are going to get in a very slow manner, step by step, everything, because there I have students from both the technical and non-technical background. So I got to make each and everything understand from the very scratch level. And we are going to cover all the labs for the topics which I could not take it at this case. So we have a lab access in our advanced course, where we have like access to remote labs will be given, and there you got to configure it in an actual like devices. Apart from packet tracer, you can go and access that devices and try to do the configuration and also do the troubleshooting. Okay, so I'll involve some troubleshooting scenarios there, and you got to do it that way. The advanced lab is going to be more useful. Yes, any other questions, guys? Okay, so meet you on Thursday. Till then, take care. Good day.
Good night, ma'am.